On the 18th of May, we recall one of those episodes of Here Come the Ottomans. One of a surprising number of those episodes. The one I'm thinking of was in 1565, and it's when the Ottomans showed up to besiege the island of Malta, to wage war on the Knights of Malta, the Knights Hospitaller. They come by a variety of names, and yes, they are the ones featured in the Maltese Falcon. So why is this order that was originally founded in Jerusalem in Malta? Well, of course, they'd been chased out of Jerusalem by Muslim invaders. They'd settled in Rhodes. They'd been chased out of Rhodes by the Ottoman invaders. They'd found finally a place to settle in Malta. But pretty soon they found themselves once again facing Ottoman invaders. And there were a couple of reasons for this. One is that the Ottomans just felt like they'd like to have Malta. But another reason was that the Knights of Malta were being reasonably effective against Islamic pirates operating in the Mediterranean and raiding Christian nations in the West. They'd even gone on a rather large expedition to try and get rid of some particularly notorious pirates in Tripoli, something that the Americans would eventually have to do under Thomas Jefferson. That's why Tripoli's mentioned in the Marines' hymn. So, in 1551, the Ottomans decided that along with one of the most notorious of these pirates, a guy named Dragut, they would besiege Malta. That didn't work, so 14 years later, they came back. And the siege lasted until, of all iconic dates, September 11th, when Maltese resistance finally proved too much for them, and they left. But it is part of this enduring story of a siege of the Christian West by the Ottoman Turks and others, to the point that Voltaire said, nothing is better known than the siege of Malta. I don't know today if anybody remembers it. I fear partly that our history has completely vanished. But another thing about the siege, by the way, is that it helped to break the notion that the Ottomans were invincible. It's one of the things that helped set up the great victory at Lepanto, that more or less put an end to their attempts to expand through the Mediterranean and then sent them overland, leading to the gates of Vienna. And look, I know that history is full of people attacking one another for illegitimate reasons. I know that the human race has an unpleasant propensity for aggression and bloodshed. But this does seem to me to confirm Samuel Huntington's point in his book, The Clash of Civilizations, about the bloody borders, that there does seem to be this propensity to expand and to regard defensive measures, like fleeing from one island you've been chased out of and holding up in another one, and then trying to stop pirates from raiding. And pirates in movies may be somewhat romantic. In real life, pirates are terrible people who enslave, who slaughter, who rape, who rob, who burn. They're just awful characters. And I don't know what the Ottoman Sultan was doing in alliance with them. Again, geopolitics can be an ugly business. But why is there this endless succession of confrontations moving ever westward from the heartland, except when successfully repelled, as at the Battle of Tours and so on, and then with the Reconquista of Spain? Why does it keep happening? And why does the West win so many of these battles that you'd think they wouldn't? Because the Knights of Malta were this ragtag bunch, terribly badly outnumbered, but there's a kind of dynamism in free societies that doesn't exist in unfree societies. And so the Turks showed up with a far larger force. They took far more casualties. They slaughtered a lot of civilians, but in the end they left in defeat. And the Ottoman offensive did peter out, again at Lepanto and then at the gates of Vienna. So there are some encouraging lessons here, but there also is this rather discouraging one, that this is yet one more instance where we find ourselves commemorating an Ottoman Islamist attack on the West that doesn't have any real legitimacy, but that is not subsequently, it seems, the subject of much internal inquiry and soul-searching. The West learns more from these victories than the Ottomans do from their defeats, which is not the normal pattern, because the open society isn't just better at fighting battles, it's also better at examining its own conduct critically. So, the Siege of Malta, well, yeah, I wish it had never happened. But Voltaire was right. It was famous at one time, and it deserves to be famous. This victory, the battle starts on May 18th, it ends on September 11th, is an important triumph for the free world. If you're enjoying these commentaries, please go to my website, that's johnrobson.ca, make a contribution so that I can continue to produce this kind of work, and also keep watching and subscribing to The Rebel for the news and commentary you won't get anywhere else.